Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. It's time for some more narcissist trash talk. The subject of the evening is working things out with the narcissist or other cluster B creature. Chances are, if you've been involved with such a person, let me guess what you're like. You are what most people would consider to be a generally nice person. You have a positive outlook on others. You generally believe in the good in other people and don't typically think that others have ulterior motives when interacting with them. Plus, you have a certain value system which involves holding truth to be very important. Chances are, if you've been involved with such a cluster B creature, you may have had a positive intent when something went wrong and figured that you could just work through this and then everything will be okay. Because you know that based on love bombing, things were wonderful at the beginning. You were treated like a king or a queen, and you know that that was just wonderful, and you feel unconsciously, well, if it happened at first, it can happen again. So you may direct your attention towards trying to get things back to how they were, and that's what this is about, because you're missing a very important point. You see, many of us have been programmed from childhood on to believe these types of things I just mentioned. And typically when you're growing up in your life, if you have some kind of interaction that doesn't work out, and you go to a family member or an authority figure such as a teacher or a parent and describe a situation maybe you had with a friend of yours that didn't work, very rarely will parents or other leaders tell you, oh, with that problem, don't ever talk to that person again. That person's bad news, leave them alone. That's typically not what would happen. Typically the adult would say, well, give that person another chance. Don't give up on them. It seems to be like a message we have ingrained into our brains. So that happens in your later life relationships with someone where everything seems great, but then something's horrible. And if it wasn't so great on the other parts, it would be a no-brainer to just get the heck out. Well, we're not really trained to cut people off. And that creates the perfect environment for these creatures to thrive in, because they know how to do love bombing. They know how to zero in on your needs and fulfill them, at least superficially. So if they do all that for you, that's like a dream come true, which means when the inevitable comes up where something they've done horrifying is brought into the light, well, they've got all that stuff built up behind them to fall back on and say, wait a minute, I painted your bathroom for you that time that you splattered hair color on it. Do you not remember that? And you're just going to end it all because of the secret you found out, which of course tears apart the whole mask, but they won't mention that. So it's difficult to come to terms with the fact that certain people you have to simply cut out of your life. That goes against most of our original programming and training. And I've experienced situations where I'd met a person and was involved with it, and it was doing its love bombing stuff, and I was under its spell, and I might talk to somebody else and say, oh, I met this wonderful person, and it turns out the person I'm talking to knows that person, and they have quite a different tale to tell. I'm thinking of my situation with all the love bombing, beauty and fun and happiness, and then I'm hearing someone that I know and trust saying, oh, that person is bad news. You should get away as soon as possible. Hearing those words and experiencing that experience, I'd be tempted to think, well, maybe he or she's just mistaken, because we don't want to let go of that illusion. And these creatures know that. That's what keeps them in business in a lot of cases. So we will tend to tune out what they said and listen to it and tell them, oh, well, I'm sure you must misunderstand or something. But the narcissist creature cluster B, they know these things. They've planned ahead for them. Now, as far as relationships go, you've heard in real life with non-abusive, non-cluster B creatures, people talk about how their relationship takes work. And that's true in a multitude of ways. In the traditional sense, though, a relationship taking a lot of work would involve, for example, a single person who's maybe dated a lot in their life and never really settled down with anybody and enjoyed the freedom, but then they found this person, let's say, who seems to be different and wants something more from them. That requires a lot of mental work. To think, okay, well, so far up to this point, I've been single and I've done this and this and this. I'm now going to switch into one person permanently, and that's quite a change from the typical single person. So for you, work may be self-work, like discussing with yourself, okay, I'm no longer going to think that every weekend I can look at another pretty girl and see if she's interested because now I've got this. And that kind of thing goes on, as well as focusing all of your attention towards the person and then finding out their opinions differ from yours and not wanting to cause problems because some parts are really good. So it's like a balance of working things out, coming to understandings, realizing that certain things you feel strongly about this other person doesn't, and then maybe having a dialogue to reach a common ground, not where you both necessarily agree, but where you both understand where each other's coming from. Well, those are all the hallmarks of healthy relationships. There are going to be disagreements. But of course, with this cluster B creature, it seems at the beginning at least, those disagreements just don't exist. It's like everything's falling in place. And that makes a very strong impression. And these are just a few of the examples people go through as far as their internal thoughts and their idea of going into a serious relationship, because they're genuine. They're thinking about it in real terms. Like, okay, if I'm going to do this, then it's going to be for real. The difference is, with your cluster B creature, it's all a fake act. So all the struggles you may be going through, like if you had recently been flirting with a girl or a boy on and off here and there, and then you've decided to make something more official with this new person, that's going to require you, because you're playing by the rules, to tell that other person, well, I know we've been casually talking, but I'm getting serious with someone, so we shouldn't talk. Things like that would happen in real life with non-abusive people. But of course, with the cluster B creature, they've got 10 others on the side for backup, just in case you don't work out. You'll notice, though, how they're so naive appearing, where they don't seem to have any of those struggles. And if you mention yours, they'll be saying, oh, well, so you've got these struggles. And that allows them to maintain a superior position, which is basically abuse, because they're fake to begin with, and then they're adding on to the fakery. But you hear people talk about working in relationships. I just covered a few of the examples of things the non-abusive person may go through. When we look at it from the other side, the narcissist creature, their version of working for a relationship has more to do with the love bombing in the idealization phase, where they put you constantly before their own needs. They listen to little details you let out and react to them in your favor to help you. Like when you just randomly look at your bathroom wall and say, oh, look at that, I splattered it with hairspray. I'm going to have to get that taken care of. And then the next day they show up with a can of paint and a brush and they say, I'm going to fix your bathroom. That kind of stuff. That to them is their version of work in a relationship. Their work is to try to impress the target, lead it on, and fool it into believing it's a genuine person, and that it really has strong feelings for them. So it's two different ball games going on at the same time. You're struggling to make things work wonderfully and to adapt to the situation, yet here's this creature who appears to have worked all that out already and is focusing on idealizing you, which of course you have to admit is nice if someone does that stuff genuinely. But I've learned when people are too nice, I start to feel, I wonder when the price tag's going to come up for this. Which typically turns out to be right. When you look at these two different situations and try to put them together, you've got one person who's genuine, trying to adapt their life to fit with this other person. And then you've got this other person who's been phoning from day one and who is carefully crafting a mask to lure the other person into a trap, basically. Those are two non-compatible agendas. And that is why they call the narcissist, or cluster Bs, disorder, because there's no order there in the long run, because you've got two non-compatible situations thrown together with the intention of making something positive out of it, but the way it's designed, it's flawed. Because of many of our upbringing, we tend to want to hold on to those good parts of these relationships. After all, last night in the bedroom was great, and it felt so wonderful to have that breakfast brought to me, but then you think, but what about that person I suspected he or she was dating at work, and then I saw the two of them together in a picture. I saw that he's been calling her on his cell phone bill, and he said he never talked to her outside work. That kind of stuff, it doesn't fit. It's like two opposite extremes, and we're tempted to think, okay, well, let's just resolve the issue with the girl at work, or the boy at work, and it doesn't get resolved. You've overstepped your boundaries by finding that out with these people, and they have 10 more up their sleeve, just like this. So the conclusion here is there really isn't working anything out with these types of creatures. The design is flawed from the beginning. Of course, you don't know that because it's disguised at first, but when you step back and step away from it, you've got to realize that it's disorder. It is not going to fit together. No matter how they love-bombed at first, you have to accept that that was an act. And most of us don't think that way, but they're the type that the first time they meet you, they're paying attention to everything. Even if you're nervous and just randomly saying something about, oh dear, my shoe is kind of tight, they'd be the type to zoom in and say, guess what? I brought something to loosen your shoe. You said it was tight, and you'll think, wow, well that's the way they operate, and to someone who doesn't operate that way, it can appear flattering and wonderful, but they say if it seems too good to be true, probably is. That applies here 1,000-fold.
I am the Narcopath, as you know. One thing you need to work on is your paranoia.
You always thought I was out with this guy or that guy, and most of the time I was, but still, you don't need to ask about that stuff. I figured you were probably out with other chicks, so it's even. I just don't tell you about it. Yes, I swore it was the truth, there was nobody else, but those are just words. Besides, I figured you were doing the same thing. So when I came out pregnant, you were sterile, well, it must have been immaculate. You didn't buy that, so I quickly left town. And I aborted the fetus and gave it to the queen. She ate it.
Oh, and another reason I had to discard you was you were getting to be too nosy.
I was flirting with your sister, flirting with your mother, all of it behind your back, and telling them things so they wouldn't think it was strange. You had the nerve to keep checking up on me and suspecting me of doing these things and almost ruined it by telling them things that weren't true. I couldn't deal with that. There were too many things to deal with, and I figured it's not worth all this effort. I should be able to get away with what I want to get away with. You should look the other way, and you weren't doing that. So I had to leave and find another target and start all over again. That's the way it works in my life.
Oh, you called me a liar, basically. I remember all the times I argued with you and said I am not a liar, even though obviously I was, but I couldn't admit to it.
As far as me and the truth goes, honey, I see absolutely no reason to tell the truth unless it gets me what I want. That's my key. I know you were confused because sometimes I'd be telling the truth, other times I'd be lying, and you couldn't figure out or decode how to tell the difference. Well, the simple fact is, if the truth gets me what I want, well, I'm gonna give it. But if it doesn't give me what I want, it's gonna be altered into a lie.
One of the things you said to me was that I had no feelings. I'm here to tell you now that despite what I told you then.
You got that right. I ain't got no feelings. You were nothing to me. You were simply an object for me to get things out of that I needed. I just played my role to get the things I needed. I never let on that that's what I needed or wanted. I just made things look like they just happened to happen. Honey, there were no feelings, and that's right. When I found someone who had more to offer than you did, I just told you I had to go. And that's it. You wondered how I could just leave? Well, that's why. Maybe this'll clear it up a little bit for you. Just so you can get an idea of what I really thought about you and about my latest, as a matter of fact. Actually, there are 3 latest. None of them know about each other, and it's going to stay that way. Remember that time that you had your cell phone you used all the time that I went through, only erased a lot of numbers I was jealous of? Remember how it quit working, and you threw it in a little pile and even wanted to recycle it? Well, there was a time when you were playing with that phone all day and night, playing Candy Crunch Saga, texting and going on Facebook and all that other stuff. And then all of a sudden, you just tossed it aside? Well, think of yourself as a cell phone. That's right. When I dated you, you were my cell phone. I interacted with you day and night. But then, when the new version came along that was better than you, I simply tossed you up into the pile and began pressing buttons on my brand new, higher quality cell phone. That's right, you were nothing more to me than a cell phone. And when I found one that worked better, I didn't need you anymore. I think about you with the same affection that you might feel about that old phone you tossed aside and haven't even looked at in years. Probably recycled by now. Got it? Good. Ah.
Hi, honey. It's me. Remember me? The Narcopath that ruined your life? Well, I'm back now. Wondering if you want to give me a second chance.
I know I've changed a little, but tough. We all change. What do you say? I remembered that little stuffed animal you used to cuddle with in the bedroom. I was thinking of it the other day. So what do you say?